things of nature, things of that 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 nature.
Well, happy Sunday, everybody. Curtis Wilkerson and Andrew Ellis here with Inside Arkansas, coming back for our position report card following Arkansas's 21-17 loss to Texas A&M in the Southwest Classic. We like to react immediately following the game, so we like to sleep on it before we start passing out grades, and that's what we did. So here we are. But before we get into it, Andrew, I got to ask you, man, if you feel any differently now than you did in the immediate aftermath when we were doing our post-game show and everything yesterday. To me, I don't know, man, like the Southwest Classic at AT&T Stadium, it's like the Fast and the Furious series, you know, like it's crazy how many different ways the same damn storyline can play out. So I don't know. I don't think I feel any differently after sleeping on this one.
I don't feel a ton different, but I do feel like a little bit better equipped to talk about it than I did. Like I always have trouble processing these things in the moment, and it's tough. I didn't think it would be hard to process considering that the result and the outcome was kind of staring us in the face the whole time. We kind of felt like if Arkansas was going to lose, it was going to be by one score and in a game that they probably should have won. But somehow watching it happen, I guess I'm one of those idiots that keeps going to the Fast and Furious movies because I was like, they had me hook, line, and sinker the whole time. And then by the end, I'm like, oh, man, they didn't do it again. Like, it really is just kind of tough. And what sucks about it, Curtis, is that last week we kind of felt like we got to table some of the big picture talk of the program and the whole, is Sam Pittman stable? Is he on the hot seat? Is what's going on? We felt like we had bought ourselves some time from having to discuss all of that. And the reality is, like, it's now time to do that big picture look at the entire situation, which we are not going to do here on this program here today. That's what we have Inside Arkansas Live for all week long. Today is going to be focused on the game, but when I think about the game, that's kind of where I think. And I'll tell you one thing that bugged me, Curtis. None of my buddies texted me to like make fun of me. Like I'm in group messages with tons of LSU fans, a ton of whatever. None of them even like texted me like, Arkansas blew that one. Like didn't even register with anybody. And like nationally, no one's talking about it. And so it's like kind of a realization that it's like, this is what people expect. I mean, the spread was 5.5. They lose by 4. It just like, it almost was like the script played out the way it was supposed to, and nobody cares. And that's a little disheartening to me.
Yeah. The one thing that stood out to me the most from the broadcast yesterday on television, and usually there's something that they do or they say where I'm just like, that was stupid, where they mistook Malachi Singleton for Taylon Green last week. And, like they always do something because they do their research. They're also covering an entire country, whatever. But there was one point late in the third quarter of that game. I don't remember which one it was, but one of the guys said, a lot of people are wondering if Arkansas is a contender in the SEC. And I was like, boy, you haven't been watching long, and you obviously don't know how this game's going to turn out.
Who is wondering that? Who was asking those questions?
It was one of those moments where I kind of raised my brow, and I was like, hold up, do I need to rewind to make sure I heard this dude right? We know how this is going to end, and then it ended this way. But you're right, though, about what you said earlier, because I keep coming back to the well. Also, I was bound and determined that I was going to pick a split between the Auburn and A&M games. I did it in the preseason. I flipped my Auburn pick before the game last week, and Arkansas winds up winning that one. And I should have stuck to my guns, but I didn't. I started drinking that Kool-Aid just a little bit and got burned. And we all did, because we all picked Arkansas to win this game. And in hindsight, which is always 2020, I don't know why the hell we did that. But anyway,
childish.
Yeah, come on now. We're better than that. And now we'll all overcorrect and pick Tennessee to whoop up on them this weekend, which they, in fairness, probably will. So, but let's get into the report card, man. And we'll start with the offense, with the hope that maybe this is very harsh in the beginning and then gets a little bit better towards the end when we move on to the defense. But hey, it is what it is, man. Quarterback is where we usually start with Taylon Green. And his numbers for the total game, 23 of 41 passing. That's 56% completions. About par for the course, 279 yards, not bad. A touchdown, an interception. I I'll give my grade first, and then we'll let you go, and we'll see what you think about what I did here. I went D+ with this one, and the reason I did, because this is kind of the Taylor Green experience. So like it's almost like what you expect, which makes you think, well, why not maybe a C or something like that? But the yardage was there. The accuracy issues were expected. He had that mix, right, where he'd have a brilliant play where he escapes, he hits Tesla for a long touchdown, and then he throws just, a pick. And the one that he threw may not have 100% been on him, but boy, he got away with a few throws that probably should have been picked. The difference to me in this one, and why I went lower, is because his legs really got neutralized in this game. It's the first time that we've seen that this year. But the biggest thing, honestly, for me, Andrew, is the team leader on the offense was rattled for half the game. And that was Sam Pittman telling the sideline crew that. It was the sideline crew saying still shook up. Bobby Petrino's trying to talk to him, settle him down, calm him down. Taylor Green, I get it. Like, he was under duress. He had people coming at his neck. And I think a lot of the grades on this offense are going to be a little bit lower because of one particular group leaving him out to dry. But he's supposed to be the calming presence and the voice of reason on that offense that gets everybody settled down in the huddle, executing. But he was kind of the one freaking out. And I don't think you can have that at that position. That's why I went lower.
Yeah, so I was kind of trying to decide between D+ and C-. Those are the two I was going between. And honestly, about 10 minutes ago, I was leaning towards C-. So we're going to talk about PFF grades a good bit. We're going to reference them a lot on this show. If you look at the PFF numbers, they credited a lot of the pressures and the Taylor Green being forced out of the pocket. They kind of blamed him for it a lot. They didn't blame the O-line as much as, frankly, I thought they would. Now, there was still, we'll talk about that group in a little bit. And so I think that's worth noting. And I think that Bobby Petrino's comments, at least what Taylor McGregor was hearing and her reporting during the game on the sideline, was they were trying to get him to not panic and not leave the pocket so soon. And he just seemed to have a tendency. He would just, as soon as anything would happen, anything would break down, he would take off and run and then try and make something happen and kind of give up on the play. And so I think a lot of that goes past the box score. And, you mentioned him being rattled, which, again, it's rare when you hear a quarterback come out or a coach come out and say his quarterback was rattled.
You've got the upperclassmen. Yeah, you've got the upperclassmen experienced transfer quarterback. They've got the redshirt freshman. And your quarterback is the one that we're talking about is rattled the entire game. I don't like that. I'm not.
Well, that's also supposed to be, you mentioned the team leadership. That's supposed to be kind of one of Taylor's calling cards, is that he's a leader. He's a poise, he's a nice presence back there, and he gets the guys rallied up. And so I think it's fair to actually put some criticism toward him on that front, that, the offense, you're in a game where you just need one score in the second half. One score in the second half would put this game away, and they were never able to find it. I know Kyle Ramsey bailed him out with a 45-yard field goal that one time, but they just weren't able to get anything going. And I feel like if you had someone back there who could calm the group and say, hey, guys, let's just lock in. Let's not do anything stupid here, and kind of be that voice that the offense needs. It seemed like they were in – it was a group that was in disarray most of the day, and it felt like it was like one step forward, two steps back. And so and I think the quarterback, a lot of that falls on him. Of course, the inaccuracy, 56% once again. That's kind of always, you said it's what you expect. From that standpoint, physically on the field, there was a lot of Taylor Green that, we expected. He made a couple of huge plays, made a couple really nice throws, but then also made some questionable decisions, left the pocket too soon a lot of times, and, forced the issue a few times to Tyrone Broden. And ultimately, I wasn't terribly offended by the actual on-field product that Taylor Green put forth, but because of what you said and because of all those other factors and the leadership, which I feel like if you're going to be billed as a team leader, that's something we're going to grade you on. And so I think D+ is fair here. And I think this is the first time the coaching staff is actually disappointed in their quarterback, because I really don't feel like they felt that way at Auburn, even UAB, which he was, really bad in that first half. After the game, I felt like Sam Pittman was kind of like okay with the way it played out. And obviously they lean on his legs. And of course it is worth noting, like you said, didn't get going at all on the ground. And, I don't necessarily blame him for that. I think A&M did a good job of containing him, but
credit to them.
When we're grading out your performance, it's not going to bode positively for you. We can't give you credit for them doing a good job. And so I think D+ is where I'm landing. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the thing that stuck out to me, I was laying in bed last night after watching that Bama Georgia game, which was that's the most fun I've had watching a college football game in a long time. That was awesome, man. But I was thinking about these grades, and something that kept coming back to me was John does those questions of the day on Inside Arkansas Live, and we had one earlier in the week that was basically like, hey, if you like, do you trust Taylon Green, in a big moment? Like, you've got a last minute drive, you need a score to win. Like, is he going to be the guy who can get you the touchdown pass, whatever? And all week I was like, yeah, no, I think so. I think he's got a knack for the big play, the big moment. We saw him after he set out a possession against Auburn, then he leads them on 3 straight scoring drives. They win that game. He just kind of seemed like he maybe had that it factor. And I'm not saying he doesn't, but he didn't yesterday. And so that has to factor into it. But the running backs, man, I'll tell you what I did not have on my bingo card is Devin Bell to have more than double the amount of rushing yards as Jaquindon Jackson at halftime. That I did not think that was going to be the case. You go through and look at it. Arkansas only rushed for 106 yards as a team. And there are things that factor into that, sack yardage, whatever. Taylon Green's in there. Devin Bell is in there. If you look at the running back specifically, Jaquindon Jackson, 10 rushes, 37 yards, 1 touchdown. Braylon Russell, 3 rushes for 15 yards. And Rodney Hill, 1 rush for 7 yards. I'll let you go first with the running back grade here, which I'll admit, again, it's difficult because they get the ball and they run it, but they've got to have some help around them too. But man, this was a massive disappointment to me.
It was a massive disappointment, but I'm going to be honest with you, Curtis. I'm not putting it much on the running backs. I'm not going to grade them super harshly. One, I don't think there's much to grade them on. I mean, you mentioned 10 carries for Jaquindon Jackson.
Most surprising thing.
Which, I mean, 100% just like is a low total. And I get it. Yeah. The run game wasn't going great, and so they kind of panicked and abandoned it early. In a game that ended up 21-17, you have the SEC's leading rusher. I think it's borderline inexcusable to only have 10 carries. I don't know how that happened.
Did you not to cut you off? Did you listen to Sam Pittman last night? By the way,
I did not.
Okay, I did, and he was asked about that. Like, dude, you threw it 41 times. Jackson only gets 10 carries. Like, what was the thought process there? And he just said we weren't having success rushing on first down, and we thought we'd have more success throwing it. Come on, dude.
I was like, if he would have said now, because I was gonna willing to change. If you had said, he came out and said, well, Jaquindon was a little bit banged up, and schematically, blah blah blah. If it's just because they kind of panicked because they didn't have success early, I cannot accept that.
Yep.
And the reason I can't accept that is because look on the other side of the ball. Look at what Le'Veon Moss did. He was the same situation. He had like 14 yards at halftime. He ends up with over 100, breaking off a few big ones that helped turn the tide in that game and helped put the game away, helped turn it in A&M's favor because you stick with it. And look, I'm typically one of those guys who's like, in offensive football in 2024, I'm like, you should throw to set up the run. Like, I'm kind of that guy. The nerds have gotten to me where I just analytically, I'm kind of leaning like a pass happy approach. But when you're Arkansas and you have one of the best rush attacks in the SEC, the leading rusher, and a guy who's a workhorse, a bell cow, he seems to be one of those guys who's almost better on his 20th carry than he is on his 10th. And so I would have just kept giving him the ball and expecting him to make something happen, which, by the way, in the second half, he ran the ball much better. And I mean, they were getting more and more chunks. I mean, he had an 11-yard run there late. He had an 8-yard run. Like, he had some little, not huge gains, but nice little chunk plays that you can build your offense around. And I just felt like too often they abandoned that a little too early. Braylon Russell, I thought actually he had 3 carries, 15 yards. I was pleased with his carries. I thought he ran the ball pretty well. I thought he ran hard.
Hitting dudes as hard as Jaquindon Jackson hits dudes. Like,
he smashed that one dude and left him sitting there for a minute. Braylon Russell, I was pleased. It was good to see him get out there and get some reps in the SEC and get his feet wet a little bit. I thought he did a good job. And I thought when Jaquindon had the ball, he ran pretty well. Obviously, a lot of times he was getting hit early. He did fall down on the one pass that he caught, which was pretty funny. I think he did actually catch 2 or 3 passes, which, by the way, continues to be a thing that he does for Arkansas that he didn't do back in the day. I think he had like 9 career receptions. But I got to be honest, Curtis, I can't look at yesterday's game and be like, running backs, you got to be better.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to give him a C+ because it's not like they did anything great. But I thought the running backs did well with what they were given. They just weren't given much, and that means spaced by the O-line and room to work from their play caller.
Yeah, I had him down for a C for a lot of the same reasons. It's almost it was almost taken out of their hands. It's tough to evaluate.
Literally.
You mentioned like Arkansas maybe going away from it while Texas A&M kind of continued to chip away until Moss really got going. It's like that analogy of the miner who keeps digging through the rock, digging through the rock, digging through the rock. One of them gives up, and it's just like, damn, I did all this for nothing. The other one keeps going, and eventually he gets the freaking diamond, and that's what happened for Texas A&M. So, that was just very surprising to me to see 10 carries for Quentin Jackson. That's just never okay with me. I'm sorry. I mean, but you're right. He did catch 3 passes. So for the game, he finishes with 73 total yards and a touchdown, 13 touches, but he's got to be touching the football 20 times a game.
Also 73 divided by 13. Like that's a pretty solid little like average there. Like I know he only averaged 3.7 a carry, but it's like, I don't know. I would have liked to see him get more than 13 touches, frankly.
Yeah, for sure.
Call me crazy. I think you should give your best player the football. I don't know. Call me crazy.
I mean, come on now. Wide receivers. And this one was interesting because they actually got some guys involved for a change. And so Taylon Green was about as accurate as always. But there were 23 completions to go around, and a lot of those went to the receivers for a change. Andrew Armstrong was hurt, and whether that was cramps or a muscular thing, I don't know. He kept kind of reaching back at that calf/Achilles. Hopefully he's good moving forward. They're probably just trying to get him to the bye week and then shut him down for a little bit to get healed up. But 6 for 72 for him. He was targeted 11 times in this game and came up with 6 receptions. They targeted Isaiah Satania. I didn't realize this last night. 11 times. I don't know if PFF reflects that, but that's in the main statistics here. He has 6 for 27. So you could tell they were trying to get him the ball and let him create something, make a play. Isaac Tesla, great man. It was so good to see. 5 receptions, 120 yards. He had the big touchdown catch. So he gets it going. Broden, who we probably have plenty to talk about with him if we wanted to in terms of some of the same old, but he did finally catch a pass, 1 for 15 yards. Jordan Anthony got one. So they spread the wealth a little bit. I don't know. There was a lot of yards after catch, by the way. They had 101 yards after the catch in the first quarter alone. So you like to see that. Now, a decent amount of it was Tesla on that one play. But hell, man, I'd probably give him a B. Okay,
I'm glad that I'm not crazy for saying B- here. Like I was worried that I was going to be like too positive here because right before we started this, I was saying like, yeah, we're going to be kind of mean to the offense, but then we'll be nice to the defense.
It's coming.
Yeah, it is coming. But no, receiver, like I thought it's hard to complain. I mean, the Tyrone Broden thing is what it is at this point. It's not a great connection, and really, frankly, I don't know. And I know everybody was saying, yeah, he should have came back to the ball in the interception, which is 100% true. Like he definitely should have fought for that to at least try and break it up. But I can't really act like that was going to be a completion either way. Like it was a horrible decision, horrible throw. It was behind him.
Double coverage.
Sure, should he have come back to the ball and tried to break it up? 100%. He should. And so, look, I'm not grading Tyrone Broden well, and PFF didn't either. They had him at a 55. And so he's kind of the one you could knock here. But Tesla catches 5 of his 6 targets, according to PFF. And by the way, PFF had 8 targets for Satania. So I'm guessing there were some throwaways that the University of Arkansas counted as they had to just pick an intended receiver, and he was the nearest one.
I like 8 targets and 6 receptions better.
Right. It sounds more like the game that I watched. And by the way, some of these targets we're talking about are tap passes and what have you. But overall, like I thought Isaiah Satania, that you could tell they wanted to get him going. And Tesla, what's crazy is like, now they did throw him a few bubbles afterwards, but the big play that he made was not like hey, let's target Tesla. It was literally just scramble drill.
Yeah.
Taylon Green gets out of the pocket. Tesla sees him. He kind of finds the open room. That was awesome, man. That was beautiful. And that was, by the way, we talked a lot of negative of Taylon Green. Maybe the best throw he's made in his entire career, best play he's made in his entire career. The one to Tesla was beautiful. But yeah, Andrew Armstrong, you mentioned how banged up he was. Dude's a gangster. Like he really is.
Yeah.
He's not scared of these dudes. A&M really was like trying to like rough him up and like trying hard to take him out of the game. There was the one time he caught it was like a 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, and they throw a quick slant to him and he catches it. And the dude is literally holding Andrew from behind and like trying to tackle him as he's catching the ball. And then he actually put up, you remember this play? He put this up after Armstrong caught a ball like to easily convert a 3rd down. And he's doing this pointing for a first down, and the guy's like, "We got to stop," and it's like, nah, that doesn't work like
not
that.
quite.
He made a couple just really tough contested catches. I thought Andrew Armstrong, man, like it's hard to complain about that guy,
He
especially
was
knowing how banged up he was. Like he was out there between every possession trying to get right, trying to do what he can. And he was clearly very frustrated.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Potentially maybe through hands with Keyshawn Blackstock, which, you know, he wasn't the only person who got their lick on Keyshawn Blackstock in this game.
That's a fact.
We'll get to him a little bit later, but I love watching Andrew Armstrong play football, man. Like if there's any other silver lining of this team and this season and all this that's going on, like everybody should just be enjoying him for what he is, because I think he's an all SEC receiver. Got to get that guy in the end zone, though. Got to get him in the end zone.
Yeah.
But overall, Curtis, I was fairly pleased with the receivers. I'm going to go B- just because Satania didn't really make a ton of like game changing plays. So I can't give them like too big of a thing. But I thought, I mean, they've kind of, it seems like they've found their three guys, and those three guys are pretty solid.
Yeah, not too shabby. And then just, again, according to PFF, no drops from the receivers. So that's also good. And then I don't really remember any off the top of my head. There was one ball to Broden, but it was pretty heavily contested. So I don't know if would give him a drop for that either. So, okay, not too bad. Tight ends.
Again, it's like impossible to grade here.
You know what? Let's see. First of all, they threw to Luke Hasz twice. Once it was when Taylor Green was about to get just absolutely destroyed. That connection didn't work. Another was a little 2-yard connection, and then he was grabbing his back, so he's hurt. He's not on the injury report, but his back has been hurt all season. So I don't know how that works. And then Sam admitted it in the post game. So are you admitting that you're withholding guys from the damn injury report?
I was gonna say he's gonna get himself in some hot water there. And we predicted this. We predicted that he was going to do this. Lie about, like, you say something he wasn't supposed to say regarding the injury report. I mean, he's been hurt since at least week 2, because that's when we've first seen him hold his back, and he has not been listed on that injury report once. I'm guessing if he's a full participant in practice, they don't have to. Maybe that's the rule there, but he's clearly banged up.
Yeah.
He only played 27 snaps.
He only played 27 snaps. They didn't utilize tight ends as much as they typically have been, which is a little bit interesting because, they didn't block worth a damn. But yeah, he played 27 snaps. Ty Washington 21. I see Gums is credited for 7. Ty Washington had a really rough day at the office, according to PFF. I'm going to give him a D. They weren't involved in the passing game. They didn't block particularly well. So, yeah.
Yeah, and if the tight ends have a problem with that, then tell your coaches to play you more. Sorry. I mean, I mean, but seriously, like it's I don't really know what to do at this position at this point, because, and I don't think Arkansas knows what to do at this position at this point. I was kind of stunned to see, and this is why, like, because I'm sure tomorrow people will be trying to tell us, well, it's not their fault that they couldn't get Luke Hasz going, blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, when you only play him a quarter of the snaps of the game, I feel like it's tough to put your hands up and be like, well, we've been trying to get him going. It's like, I don't know. And look, if they felt like they had better, like they went 4 wide a lot in this game, and that's why Tisla had the game that he had. And so clearly I think Arkansas was fine with that decision, but don't give us the spiel about how you're trying to get him going. You've kind of mailed it in on trying to get him going.
Yeah, exactly. Offensive line, I'm going to let you go first here. This is where I lost some respect for PFF, I think.
Yeah, a little bit.
But I think we could all agree, or anyone who watched that performance yesterday could all agree, it wasn't a banner performance for the O-line at Arkansas.
It certainly was not. And so, you mentioned PFF. I'm just going to read these grades, Curtis, because they're kind of stunning. And again, the conclusion I took was they credited a lot of these pressures and the sacks on Taylor Green. Although Keyshawn Blackstock was charged with giving up 2 sacks and 5 hurries. So that is 7 total pressures allowed by Keyshawn Blackstock, who they handed out a crisp 36.9 overall grade, or pass block grade, I should say, which is not great. They gave Jaquinton Jackson, by the way, a 45 pass block grade. But outside of that, Josh Braun did not allow pressure in this game. They give him an 87.4 pass block grade, which is primetime elite. That's probably one of the top 5 in the entire country this week. Addison Nichols at center, they gave him an 84.8. They did not credit him with allowing any pressures. Marion Harris, they credited with allowing 1 hurry, no sacks, 83.3 for him. So the best pass block performance of his career. Carmona, they gave a 67.1. They credit him with 2 pressures. They did not credit him with allowing a sack. And I know he gave up the last sack of the game, like the sack, the strip sack that ended the game for Arkansas.
Yeah.
I'm guessing. So they're not blaming Carmona, whose guy made the sack. I'm guessing they said Taylor Green held the ball too long, which I'm sure is, I haven't watched back to play, but I remember him holding it a good bit on that particular play. But interesting that PFF is kind of, and Taylor Green certainly is not devoid of blame. I mean, we gave him a D+, but it seemed like they kind of let the offensive line skate a little bit. Curtis, I am not. I'm not going to let the offensive line skate.
No.
I think, one, they didn't get any push in the run game, and PFF agrees with that. Their run block grades, Braun had the highest at 61.6. The highest at 61.6. No push there. They weren't able to assert themselves, which, by the way, A&M's got a good defensive line, despite, or a good defensive front, I should say. Defensive line hadn't really done a ton throughout the year to warrant that claim, but I think they've got a good athletic front, and so there's no shame in not being able to dominate an SEC front and run the ball on them. But they weren't able to do it, and that's kind of a big part of what this team's identity is. And the pass protection, I felt like, was extremely shaky. I felt like, frankly, Taylor bailed him out of a few times. And I know he was very quick to run a lot. But, I mean, the biggest play of the game, he had to avoid 2 rushers to get out of the pocket and get up towards the line of scrimmage and make a play. I felt like, you can almost see why Taylor had so much hesitancy and so much happy feet back there. It's because there was pressure on so many key downs. And A&M did a good job of bringing stunts and bringing little blitzes that would throw Arkansas off, but they just did not have an answer. And so week 5, in year 5, Arkansas's offensive line continues to be a massive issue. I'm giving them just a straight up D.
Yeah. I think I'm failing them, man. I think I'm giving them an F because it just, the struggles in the offensive line, and Pittman said this over and over and over last night. They couldn't get anything going. Like, they couldn't really make adjustments. They couldn't do this. They couldn't do that because they just could not protect at all. It impacted and handicapped everything they were trying to do. I'm really surprised by those pass blocking grades in the middle of that offensive line, because at least a half dozen times I watched a rusher go straight up the A gap untouched, and flush Taylor Green right out of the pocket. And so I don't know how they grade those things, but it happened. Go back and watch the tape. So
I'll be interested to see if these grades change in the next
Me too.
2 days, because they do usually.
Yeah. And I think, it's, Texas A&M's defensive front it's pretty good, but they did enter 14th in the SEC in rush defense, and they hold Arkansas to 106 yards, and a big chunk of that was Devin Bell. Yeah, they were really getting after the quarterback, but they had only had 3 sacks in 4 games. So, it wasn't completely ruining the operation for Bowling Green last week. So why was it happening in Arkansas? I mean, these things are just true. So I think it was tough, man. The worst rushing performance of the year, to the point that they had to completely abandon it, which is not ideal. Green, poor guy, it felt like a dead man walking out there. He was going to get popped by somebody every other play. They have a really, really hard time containing speed off the edge. Blackstock in particular, but Carmona is not much better over there, and he's usually facing the better guy. It's a big, I don't know. Blackstock really struggled, dude. Is it Joe Moore time? Come on now, Tykeus. I don't know.
I was thinking about this morning. I think if Patrick Kudus is to return, which again is a very big if. Big if at this point. I mean, it doesn't seem like he's anywhere close. But I feel like now we at least know the answer of what would happen. And I think it would be Kudus returns to left guard and Amarian Harris goes out to right tackle. Because let's be honest, Curtis, when I look at this offensive line, it's not a very athletic group. I don't know. Is there anybody on the offensive line who is going to spend any amount of time in the National Football League? I think Amarian Harris is like the only guy you could really make an argument for, frankly.
Yeah.
And I think Josh Braun's fine. I mean, he's been a fine offensive lineman, but I don't think this is like a star-studded group.
There's a reason why Josh Braun is really good in the run block and not as much pass blocking.
Right.
It's because he's a big, strong dude, but if he's got to operate in any kind of space, it's not going to work out.
That's kind of how it works with Blackstock and Carmona as well.
Yeah.
I've kind of, and we've kind of known this for all. We didn't come into this year with any idea that this was like a super star-studded, talented offensive line. We just thought they were an improved unit, which technically, I guess they might end up being by the end of the year. But yeah, it's just there's just not a ton of talent in that room, and it's kind of disheartening, and it's really hard. This is why people say you can't rebuild your offensive line through the transfer portal. NFL offensive linemen do not enter the transfer portal. They just don't.
Yeah.
I mean, what you get is a guy who was a backup at Florida, a guy who is a backup at Tennessee, and a guy who was a really good Group of 5 player in Carmona. And then you get a backup at Michigan State as well. That's what this offensive line is. And I don't know. It was very apparent, we knew that going in, but now it's like, oh wow, they really do not have talent on that offensive line. So they're going to have trouble against these athletic SEC fronts. And yesterday's performance does not bode well for their chances against the Tennessees and the Texases and the Ole Misses of the world.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So a rough one for the Arkansas offense. And you look at it at the end of the day, and still they did the thing again where they have damn near 100 more yards of total offense. And, you look in a lot of key areas and you think, okay, yeah, Arkansas probably won this game. But then, you got a couple turnovers there and a bunch of penalties, and that impacts you. And also, to speak to the penalties, the offensive line was guilty for quite a few of those as well, just in some tough spots. So not ideal. Still some snapping issues, not as pronounced as they have been in the past, but you can tell that
Taylor just straight up dropped that one though.
He just dropped that one, but I think
a couple more. Yeah.
What it goes back to is if you watch it, like Taylor's really having to see that thing all the way into his hands. Most quarterbacks don't have to do that because they know exactly where it's coming. And Pittman was talking about this afterwards, that Addison Nichols is kind of changing the velocity on his snaps because he was really zipping it back there. And because it's not super accurate, like that was causing some of the problems. Now he's taking a little bit off of it and maybe it's a little bit better, but you can tell like Green's really just like, and it just throws the timing off. And even if it's a split second, that gets you. So that's got to improve too. But yeah, rough one for the offense, man. I don't know.
Yeah, tough. You remember back in the Chad Morris days when Chad Morris, it was like a thing. He wanted his offensive line, like his center, to snap slow. And so the snap would always be like this end over end, like weird, really slow developing, almost kind of like that Wake Forest, like slow mesh that they used to run. That used to drive me nuts. And so the idea of like having to take some velocity off the snaps, it's never a good sign. It's not a good sign.
I was seeing some of for the first time this year, and maybe I just missed it before, but a little bit on Twitter of Bobby Petrino is not above reproach, and a lot of disgruntled folks with his play calling and the scheme and everything. Did you have a problem with that? Like, I
had a problem with them not running the ball more, for sure.
I did too.
But in terms of like the actual like scheme and the actual plays themselves, like, it's fine. And like they move the ball pretty well.
If it's one Mississippi, it's not going to work. So no matter what you do,
Right. And I think that's why he's not above criticism, is because if you are really struggling to protect and you have the best running back in the SEC, even if you're only getting, 3-4 yards a pop, I don't know. I just feel like there's something you could do there. And so I guess he should get some criticism in that regard.
They did. They were getting the ball out of Taylor Green's hands much quicker in the second half, which is good.
Had some screens, had some bubbles, had some stuff going on.
Yeah, and I wish they would have done that more. Like it was almost like a jailbreak, but not by design. Like you can maybe just could have dumped some of those off to Jackson and get him in space a little bit, but I don't know. Rough day.
It seemed like every time they ran a quick screen, it worked. Like the ones to Jackson, he would get 7-8 yards, got 11 yards on that one when he fell down. To Slaw would always get about 5-6 on his. But yeah, I don't know. Just seemed like it almost felt like they were playing down 13 when they were up in a lot of the game, and down by only a score when they were down. And it's like, I don't know. I just felt like they hit the panic button a little too early.
Very weird, because we talked about this last night, but it seemed like Texas A&M was just very content, just kind of doing their thing. If it's a 3 and out, whatever, if they can flip the field, that's cool. But they were not panicked at all offensively. And they were very much like, hey, if we can just continue to tread water here, Arkansas is going to make a mistake and we're going to be able to take advantage of it. And
it honestly was pretty similar to how Kentucky handled Ole Miss. Like they were just content to punt, and then they made a huge play when they needed to make a huge play, and that was all she wrote.
Yep. Moving on to the defense, it's in a way I feel bad for them, and I understand that they wore down at the end of that game. And some people were saying, they let go of the rope. They quit at the end of the game. No, they didn't. The defense completely bailed Arkansas out for the second and third quarters, and they ran out of gas there in the fourth. Defensive line, they only gave up 297 yards of offense, but defensive line, I actually struggled with this one because I thought they did a great job against the run. This is a rushing attack for Texas A&M that was better than Arkansas's coming into the year, just in terms of total yardage. They did a really great job on Moss up until the fourth quarter. They did a really good job of containing Marcel Reed, the dynamic running back. I thought they did a nice job setting the edge. You had Landon Jackson, who really got going. I thought the pressure improved as the game went along. But then they just get gouged on that fourth quarter scoring drive, and you look out there and none of your dudes are on the field. And that was just really, really surprising to me to look up and see that it was, Charlie Collins and Danny Saili and Kiwi Rose. Like it was, I don't know what was going on there. And again, Sam Pittman was asked about that. Like, hey, would you maybe rather had your starters out there? And he just said he thought that the fresh bodies would play better, and he wished that they did.
Which, is fair, I guess. And to be fair, we've been saying they need to rotate D-line more. Like, it's just unsustainable.
Not in the fourth quarter
right. It was the timing of it.
Yeah.
I think you try and buy that series in the second quarter rather than the fourth quarter, maybe early third quarter, or like whatever it is. It was interesting timing, and it ended up being one of A&M's only legitimate scoring drives. Because really, they had a huge play early in the game where it was a 60-some yard touchdown throw where they just missed tackles in the secondary, and then you had the short field 5-yard touchdown drive or whatever it was to make it 14. This was their only real touchdown drive that they sustained and got a bunch of huge chunk plays. And so yeah, it's really tough that when the game was on the line, you didn't have your starting D line in. And so it's tough because it's maybe he heard us say that they needed to rotate, and he was like, you know what, I'm going to do it with 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. That's going to be whenever I bring in Charlie Collins for his SEC debut. I cannot get over that. When I saw him, I was just there's no way. I was number 9. I was is that Charlie Collins? Yeah. They brought him in for his collegiate debut. Did he play in the UAPB game? If he played, it was only the UAPB game. Literal first real life action for Charlie Collins came in the biggest possession of the game in the fourth quarter. And, I'm not even going to blame Charlie Collins for it not going well for him. But getting back to the grading aspect, Curtis, the starting D line, I thought played well. I would argue that this is a good game for Landon Jackson. Nico Davier they gave him a 28.5 tackling grade. But I felt like he was pretty solid. He had a pretty nice little pass rush grade. I thought he did a good job. Eric Gregory, I thought was solid. He looked like the video game Eric Gregory on that one play, which is nice to see. Quincy Rhodes only plays 11 snaps and he gets his first career sack. I thought that was cool. And so it's there was plenty of positives. And like you said, they slowed down the run. And then clearly the depth. It's just an issue.
Yep.
That second group is just it's tough to go into SEC games with nobody after your top 4 or 5 guys, which by the way is what we've been saying all offseason, all during fall camp. We were we feel good about that top 4, top 5.
But Deke Adams said
after that, what we found out is it's not good after that. And so as a whole, you add it all together, Curtis. C plus. I feel like I can't knock them too much because it really wasn't a ton of, it's not like they were getting gashed all day. And even on the stats, under 300 yards of offense, the rushing was fine. And so I'm grading that second group as a D, and then that top group as closer to a C plus B minus type of range. I'm just going straight up C for the D line. I don't really know what to do with this group.
Yeah, that's true. I was kind of floating between a C plus and a B minus, and I think I'm stuck on a C plus just because, again, in the biggest moment, you couldn't you guys were so fatigued you couldn't have them out there, and then the other guys weren't ready. So I think that drops them down a little bit. Linebackers, and you mentioned this as maybe one of the key position groups for Arkansas prior to the game, just because we kind of had for the same reasons. Le'Veon Moss, super shifty running back. He's hard to bring down. He forces guys to miss tackles. Marcel Reed, this is the first real, I guess. Yeah, he was the biggest dual threat that Arkansas has faced so far, and he's a real dynamic dude. They kept talking about his crossover which is just, his little juke move there, but it's pretty nasty. I got to give him credit for it. And so Arkansas being sound, gap sound, and then in pursuit, that was a really important bunch. And I think for the most part, I was pretty pleased with that. Now I haven't gone through and looked at the missed tackles yet. Let's see. Brad Spence didn't have one.
You're not going to find many. You're not going to find many.
Didn't have one. I don't like the linebackers really weren't guilty here. Splitzer was accounted for with one. So
he's the one you could knock. If you're going to knock a linebacker from this game, it's Switzer.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I mean, I don't think I really, and I'm trying to think if there was anything that really stood out on a negative standpoint. I don't think so with these guys. I'll give the linebackers a solid B, I think.
Curtis, I think I'm going to go B+.
Okay.
Mostly because of what you said. Like, I went into the game, kind of had this penciled as a big matchup. And Marcel Reed is very athletic. He's a tough guy to slow down. Le'Veon Moss is one of the best backs in the SEC, an experienced guy who gashed Arkansas last year, and he ended up with a nice little game there. But again, I don't really blame the linebackers for that. I blame having a bunch of freshman defensive linemen in there in the big moments. And the tackling grades, I feel like, reflect that. So Brad Spence, by the way, who's the highest graded Arkansas player in this game, 79.8 overall grade. He gets an 85.7 for the run defense and an 82.3 tackling grade. Xavier Sorey gets an 81.3 tackling grade. Larry Worth, I guess he's not really a linebacker, 75.3. Where else do we have? Steven Dix, 77.8. And then Anthony Switzer had the missed tackle, so he's 55.6. But overall, Curtis, I felt like they were kind of up for that challenge. They contained things pretty well. They, for the most part, like, didn't let A&M's run game get going. They even actually accounted for some pressures as well. Sorey was counted with a pressure. I believe Dix was counted with a pressure. And so it's like Arkansas helped a little bit. Like, I felt like there was some flash there. I'm going to give them a B+. Like, I thought it was a really solid performance in this matchup. I don't have much I can critique from that room. I think that the issues that arised were usually either someone in the secondary getting burned or the D-line getting blown off the ball. Linebackers, I felt like, held up. They continue to be arguably the best position group of the defense.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they weren't game wreckers, but man, they didn't screw anything up, and they went out there and they absolutely did their job, and they did it at a pretty high level. It's really impressive.
I mean, we always talk about, Arkansas's offense facing Auburn and A&M, or these are like real defenses that they're having to face. You know what? It's a real defense. The Arkansas Razorbacks. That's a real defense. Those are SEC linebackers. And Marcel Reed. You may be able to run against Bowling Green. You may be able to run against Florida, who's completely mailed it in. He faced a real defense yesterday, and we saw him have to make adjustments, and he ended up actually finishing the game pretty well through the air. But yeah, it's like Arkansas is not one of those defenses that you just get to run wild on. They're not. Yeah.
The defensive backs, again, without Jalen Braxton, Hudson Clark looked like he was available, but he didn't play. They only gave up 11 receptions. Arkansas did in this game. Marcel Reed, not a big passer. Keon Stewart got the start, and he gets cooked for the touchdown early. Just a poor effort on that missed tackle. In open space, you dive at the guy's foot, you miss him, he breaks free, touchdown. But they really did a really nice job, I think, of limiting big plays from there. A bad face mask, just unnecessary, by TJ Metcalf late in that game. It was, I guess, kind of inconsequential. I thought Marquise Robinson was solid. We got a Larry Worth appearance and actually made some plays out there.
By the way, they were really upset about them not calling that pass interference on Worth. I thought the guy just straight up fell down, and the throw was way over their head. Yeah. I don't know. I wasn't that offended by it.
Yeah, no, I really wasn't either, to be honest with you, and things of that nature.
And to be perfectly honest with you,
I haven't looked at the targets yet. So let's see. Marquise Robinson targeted 4 times, gave up 2 receptions, 25 yards. That's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Jaden Johnson was pretty solid in there. I mean,
Jaden Johnson. Now, his pass interference, I will say, which they ruled uncatchable, that was the one I actually thought should have been called.
Yeah.
Everybody gets uncatchable confused.
It was uncatchable because you inhibited the guy from running his route or coming back to the ball or
Right. And like people always are like, well, it would have been hard for him to get down there and make that catch. That's not uncatchable. Like it has to be really uncatchable. And I didn't think that one was really uncatchable. But he gets away with it. And Jaden Johnson targeted twice, does not allow a reception. TJ Metcalf targeted twice, does not allow a reception. Marquise Robinson allowed two. I thought he did a great job because he was pretty much following their guy, Evan Stewart. And he did a really good job of kind of limiting his damage. Now, of course, Keon Stewart allowed like the big play, the 58-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
And it missed the tackle afterwards, like just a rough one. So that has to be accounted for in the grade. Like that's a huge, red dot that you got to put on this.
Yeah.
But overall, Curtis, I'm going B- for the defensive backs. I thought they were pretty good. I think A&M's receivers are just really athletic. Like that's a group that and Marcel Reed, I'm not saying he's like going to be this guy that just bombs away on a bunch of dudes. So who knows what they have at quarterback, but A&M's receivers, man, like I think they're going to have some matchups where they just feast on some teams and really get behind and make big plays. And Arkansas allowed the one big one, but really wasn't a ton. And I felt like there was one time during the game where you texted me and you said that was a rough rep for the defensive line. That was the only time I can remember Arkansas giving up a big play on like a 3rd and 12 or whatever, where they converted. Yeah. But I think you and I were aligned in that. We were like, they had 9 seconds to throw. So it is what it is.
Somebody's going to be open. Right.
And exactly. So overall, man, like I really, you nitpick some things here and there, but I thought the secondary for Arkansas held up pretty well, especially given the context of A&M's receivers and that Arkansas was missing 2 of its top people, two Arlington boys, for the like 5th week in a row. Like I feel like the group has not been as big of an issue as it really seemed like they might be coming away from that UAB game. They responded to that pretty well, and you got to give Marcus Woodson credit for just having that group ready. Got to give Travis Williams ready. Shout out Darren Wilson as well. They really responded well to that UAB game because I was really we did this exact thing. We were like, dude, what are they going to do in the SEC if they're getting diced up by Zeno from UAB? Like, what's going to happen? These last 2 weeks, Arkansas secondary has been pretty solid against legitimate competition.
Yeah, and now they're going to have to start facing actual quarterbacks moving forward. So we'll see how they do against that because they haven't yet this season. Which you get into the SEC and you get backup quarterbacks both games. That's a nice luxury, I think, to have.
Definitely.
If they were able to hold up, and I don't think they're going to have this type of performance against Tennessee. If they do, holy shit! But we're really going to learn a lot about them with the Nikos of the world. Even a guy like Nussmeier, but you get to see Jackson Dart, you get to see Quinn Ewers a little bit later. Like those
you mean Arch Manning?
Coming.
You mean Arch Manning, bro?
No, I don't.
QB controversy in Austin? No.
I went B- also for the same reasons. I mean, I think they were very solid. Not quite as solid as the linebackers because they had that one, completely busted play there with Stewart. And I'm not necessarily knocking them for this because it's very difficult to do. But this is a game where Arkansas, I think, really needed to get a takeaway against a young, inexperienced quarterback. And they weren't able to do that. And it's not just on the DBs. I mean,
they weren't particularly close either, I will say.
Yeah. And so that would have been nice to see, especially when at this point you just had to pretty much, write down a 2 in the turnover column and start there for Arkansas because it's just for whatever reason, it feels like they're going to be that kind of team this year. So you got to at least negate that a little bit. Is it fair? Probably not, but it is what it is. But yeah, I went B- with them. So yeah, I mean, I think overall a really solid, very solid game for the defense. Shout out to Travis Williams there. He's got those guys balling out. Special teams. Okay, let's talk about the good. First of all, it was not a fake punt. It was a Devin Bell read, and Sam Pittman admitted that after the game.
Hey, credit to me. That tells you that I know ball, Curtis, because I said that in our post game where I was like, I don't think that was a one that they called from the sideline because it didn't look like that. So I was glad that Sam Pittman had my back and was like,
and Mike Elko was very quick to say that too. Like, no, this was not a called thing. It was a rugby punt. And he saw the seam and he took it. Yeah. So
ballsy, by the way, from Devin Bales.
Very ballsy because it wasn't like a 4th and
it was 15, 4th and 15.
Yeah,
so he had to run a good bit and he did it.
And then he had that great punt late in the game that they wasted when they pinned him inside the 1 yard line. That was awesome. He had a hell of a game. Kyle Ramsey, you didn't trust him in one situation, you did trust him in the next, and he gives you the lead, the 45 yarder in the 4th quarter. So like there were a lot of good things there, I thought, for special teams. However, uh, gosh, man, like, and this might be nitpicking a little bit, but one, like Satania fields this screamer inside the 10-yard line. Let
That was
one bounce,
clearly going
brother.
to go into the end zone. Was
Yeah.
very clearly going into the end zone.
Right. Yeah. You can't do that. So you got to have better awareness there. And he knows better than that. But not getting on the field because you don't have your personnel set up, having to burn a timeout because you can't get your field goal unit out there, and then botching a fake field goal in a tie game after said timeout, that's a rough one. And so Mike Elko, after the game, was saying, yeah, well, we had that timeout, and so we were able to talk to them, especially after they kind of got us on one a little bit earlier about, hey, these are things that you should expect here. So like I said afterwards, you can't do it after a timeout, one. Two, it's Sam Pittman, poor guy, man. He was asked about it, obviously, after the game, and he just said, well, we thought we'd be able to get the edge on them because they haven't rushed off the edge this season, but they just did on this one. And, it's just, I don't know. And the other thing that Elko said, when I was arguing this point too, is Texas A&M's not stupid. They know you don't trust your kicker. So they really think that, like they're going to have that in the back of their mind when you send them out there for a 50 some odd yard kick. It's at the edge of his range. You know that.
Right. It'd be one thing if this were a 38-yard attempt where it's like, okay, they're probably kicking here. It
was a bad decision. It was poorly executed. Did not like that one at all. And so honestly, like for the good that there was, and there was a lot of good, those things were very frustrating and happened in tough spots. Satania is when you're inside the 10-yard line the entire freaking game, and credit has to be given. I understand that it's like, offenses have to move the ball, defenses have to get stops or whatever, but special teams is a big part of field position, which Texas A&M controlled the entire game. I'm going C for the special teams.
I'm going with it too, and I'm glad you mentioned that A&M controlled the field position, and Satania contributed to that a little bit. He caught 3 punts, I believe, inside the 10. Now, one of them was like a sky high, and they had 3 guys right there. Okay, sometimes you just got to catch it at the 9 to save yourself those 6-7 yards. But dude, when there's one guy back there and it's like kind of a line drive, I'm forcing them to make that play. Are you really going to catch that ball at the 1 yard line? Or are you going to really, be able to read the bounce? I mean, you saw the one that Devin Bale had. Luckily, it went out of bounds. But like they had 2 guys down there.
Yeah,
they weren't able to read that bounce. And I'm not even going to knock on Tyrone Broden because how can you read that bounce? It went completely. You know what I mean? Like
that was nuts.
If I'm Satania, I'm forcing them to make that play. Especially because like the difference between the 8 and the 3, I mean, it's a big difference, but it's like I'm willing to run that gamble because it could very well go into the end zone. And I would argue that at least one of those would have went into the end zone. He decided to catch all of them, which, is fine. I'm sure he was told to do that. I didn't love that. I feel like A&M got a real leg up in the field position battle because of that. Devin Bale also had a good day at the punting office. He had 6 punts, averaged 44 yards of punt. Had one 54-yarder, had the one that was out at the half-yard line, literally the best punt you could probably ever see from an Arkansas punter, frankly. But he also had a couple that were like a little bit short-armed a little bit, little alligator-legged it, where like just didn't like they were punting from their own 35, and he doesn't even get it. He ended up, it was like a 38-yard punt. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, how does that happen? Like, how are you not booting it? I'd rather you kick it into the end zone at that point. And so there was a couple like nitpicky things there. And so, given the context of how big that special teams blunder was late in the game, I don't think you can go higher than C hardly.
Yeah.
Which sucks because they really did a lot of good things on special teams for the most part.
Yeah. Yep. I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, like sometimes we do our like post-game awards or whatever. It's weird.
Nobody
after
gets
a loss.
an award.
But to think about it, like who would the player of the game be in this one for either team? Like if you had to hand one out.
I mean, I guess Moss, he ended up with 100 yards and he, the biggest drive of the game, he got going. I will say that defensive lineman for them, let me pull up his name real quick.
Oh man, they had 2 guys, Scorton and
Scorton, dude, or Scourton.
Yeah.
Scoundrelton. That guy was really good. He was a monster, like all day long.
Record, man.
They had
Stewart
him,
made that huge play.
Yeah, they had a lot of guys that were disruptive, but he was the one that kind of jumped out at me from their defense. But yeah, it wasn't one of those games where a bunch happened. I mean, if Arkansas had won, Tesla would have been the player of the game.
Yeah, Tesla would have been the player of the game. Landon Jackson, probably an honorable mention. I mean, and good for him, man. 8 tackles, 2 sacks, 3 TFLs. That's
Landon Jackson ball. That's what we want.
That's why he was a preseason All SEC guy, and that's all we've been waiting to see all season. And he has been making like these gradual, subtle steps the last couple weeks. We thought that he was a lot better against Auburn. He still didn't get home on the sacks, but it was like, all right, he's coming around here. Then he has this huge game. Now stack him, right? Mm-hmm. And now I'm not saying he's got to go out and have 3 TFLs and 2 sacks against Tennessee, but get on the board again. And he was disruptive, and he hasn't been disruptive this season. And so you want to see him continue to do that. What else do we usually do? Play of the game. Was there one in particular that really stood out to you, good or bad? I guess
the fake field goal. I think that's the play of the game.
Yeah.
That was when you kind of knew Arkansas was losing. Like when something like that happens, you can just kind of tell. Well, and it's weird is like they ended up taking the lead after that, but still, just in that moment, it was like, okay.
I know. Yeah, that was a tough one, man. And I hated seeing the all shucks on Sam Pittman over there on the sidelines after it, because I had praised him earlier in the game when he was doing the sideline report after the first quarter and they were playing so well, and he was basically like oh hell no, like we're not doing this, we're not doing that, we got to get better here, we got to get better there, you can't not accepting this. And I was like, hell yeah, Sam.
Yeah, good to see it from Sam. And then
then it just kind of fell apart there at the end. So
then it turned into, well, I thought we played good.
Yeah, kids played hard, and they did, but
they did. Proud of them though. You got to be proud of the kids though.
You do.
Curtis, I want to pop quiz you real quick.
Okay.
Season total.
Oh boy.
Who do you think Arkansas's top 3 highest graded defenders are? I am removing 2 guys that played a combined 8 snaps, Brooks Both and Caleb James, because they are in the top whatever. Brooks Both is the number 1. He played 1 snap. He must have made a damn good play because he got an 83.1. But in terms of players that have actually played plays, who do you think Arkansas's top 3 highest graded defenders are on PFF for the entire season?
TJ Metcalf.
He's number 3 at 73.8 total.
Okay. I don't know about Xavier Swery.
No.
Okay. Landon Jackson.
He is number 1.
Okay.
At 77.8, which I thought was interesting just because it's like, I was thinking about it when we were talking about how he's making some progress. He's one good game away from like being on track for an all SEC season.
Okay.
Like, he really is good just because with defensive lineman, that's kind of how it works. But yeah, he is Arkansas's highest graded defender.
Jaden Johnson.
No, but he's up near the top. I don't think you're going to get that. You would take you a few more guesses, so I'm just going to go ahead and tell you.
Hit me with
Quincy Rhodes is the number 2 graded defender for Arkansas, 77.4. They are crediting him with 50 snaps on the season. And he played, I think, 11 yesterday.
All right.
So, hey, maybe get him a few more snaps. Seems like he's making some progress. But
shout out to Quincy Rhodes. I like it.
Who got his first career sack yesterday. The beginning. Yeah. I mean, look, redshirt freshman who's like actually playing D-line in the SEC. Like, nothing to scoff at all. I just thought that was interesting. I would not have guessed that necessarily.
No, yeah, it would have taken me a long time to get down to the Quincy Rhodes on my list. You're right about that. So.
Yeah, that's why I was like, once you started guessing, I was like, okay, let's wrap this up.
Oh man, all right. Any parting thoughts before we get out of here and just turn the page on this game until we talk about it Monday on Inside Arkansas Live when our callers are calling in asking for Sam Pittman's head?
Here are my parting thoughts, and this is a plea to the fan base.
Okay.
1, everybody like and subscribe. We just got to get that out of the way, the housekeeping, Pot of That Nature. We're crushing it over here. When you like the video, it convinces the YouTube algorithm that we're cool, and it convinces us, everyone that we're good, and we need that. But also, 2, stick with us because this football team is going to be disappointing, and I know that everyone's heard about this loss, and I know there's part of you that's like, man, you just want to check out and move on to basketball season. You want to start blowing Curtis up and asking about basketball, which you should still do. But we're still going to be telling the story of this Arkansas football team, as well as the Arkansas basketball team, as well as the Arkansas baseball team. And Inside Arkansas Live is the best place to do that. It's the best daily sports show on the planet. You can look that up. That's a fact. And so just stay with us. We're still going to be putting out some good stuff. We're still going to be bringing the heat. I mean, we still do our jobs. and we do it damn well, I would argue. And so I just want you guys to know, even though being an Arkansas fan sucks, you have a group of guys that can help process it with you. And that's what we're here to do. And so don't give up on us.
Couldn't have
Even
said
if you
it
give
better
up on the
myself.
Hawks, don't give up on us.
That's right. Yeah. Well said. We're all in this together for better or for worse. So
All in this.
exactly.
You
All
were
right,
repping
everybody.
High School Musical. You know you were. Come on.
Oh yeah. Come on now. Yeah. That was still in my wheelhouse, a little bit older than you, but it was still in the wheelhouse. All right. We're out of here, everybody. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always. Do everything Andrew said. Subscribe, like, all that stuff. We appreciate you. For Andrew Ellis, been Curtis Wilkerson, Inside Arkansas, Pot of That Nature.